They have been burning since before meaning existed, since before the first cell divided in the warm chemical soup of a forgotten world. They watched the first civilizations rise and fall, the first empires stretch their fingers across the void, the first prayers whispered into the cosmic silence. They will burn long after the last question is asked and the last answer forgotten. I have lived for 11,000 years, and I once believed I understood their patience. I was wrong. My name is Valeth Kor Seneth, and I was, the third voice of the Sereneth hegemony, keeper of the Archive of Beginnings, servant to the Council of Eternal Dawn. For 9,000 years I have watched civilizations bloom like flowers in the darkness, their lights flickering briefly before fading back into the void. I have seen species transcend their biology, merge with their machines, and scatter themselves across the stars like seeds in an endless garden. I have seen others burn themselves to ash in wars fought over resources, ideology, or simple, naked fear. I have never seen what I am seeing now. The observation deck of the Covenant of Lasting Peace is empty except for me. The other survivors, what few remain, have retreated to their quarters, unable to look at the stars anymore. I understand their weakness. I share it. But someone must bear witness. Someone must remember. Through the crystalline viewport, I can see the distant smear of light that was once the Verith cluster. 42 billion souls lived there, on 17 garden worlds and 1,000 orbital habitats. The Verith were artists, philosophers, dreamers. They wrote symphonies that lasted for decades and built sculptures visible from orbit. They believed that beauty was the highest form of truth. Now they are ash. The Hollow came for them 3 cycles ago. We received their final transmission, a chorus of voices singing their death hymn as the dark ships descended through their atmosphere like falling stars. The song lasted for 18 hours. Then there was silence. I close my inner eyelids, the ones that are meant to protect us from the light of dying suns. But there is no protection from this darkness. Third voice. The whisper comes from behind me. I do not turn. I know the voice. Malith Kor Vaser, once the commander of the 7th Fleet. Now she commands nothing. The 7th Fleet exists only in memory, in the archive I can no longer access. Report, I say, though I do not want to hear it. The Hollow have taken the Keseth arm. The Prelate of Infinite Wisdom has ordered all remaining vessels to converge on the Throne of Stars. I feel the words like a blade between my ribs. The Keseth arm, 400 inhabited systems, the birthplace of our civilization. The world where I first opened my eyes 11,000 years ago, where I first learned to read the light of distant stars and understand the mathematics of eternity. Gone. How many escaped? I ask. Malith is silent for a long moment. When she speaks, her voice carries the weight of centuries of grief compressed into a single syllable. None. I turn then, and I see her face in the dim blue light of the observation deck. She is younger than I am, only 4,000 years old, but she looks ancient now. Her silver skin has lost its luminescence, and her eyes, which once held the confident fire of a warrior born, are hollow and dark. The prelate has issued another directive. she says, and I can hear the tremor in her voice, the crack in her composure. We are to seek aid from the outer civilizations. All protocols of isolation are suspended. All treaties of non-contact are void.
I stare at her, not comprehending. For 9,000 years, the Sereneth hegemony has maintained its separation from the younger species, believing ourselves guardians of the galaxy's order, protectors of the peace between stars. We have watched, guided, occasionally intervened when necessary, but always from a distance, always with the certainty that our wisdom was supreme, our power unmatched.
The outer civilizations? I repeat, you mean the remnants, the survivors of the third expansion, the primitives we chose not to elevate. Myleth's jaw tightens. Yes, them. They cannot help us. They are children playing with fire, building their crude ships and their fragile stations. They have no understanding of what we face. The hollow would consume them in moments. And yet, Maleth says quietly, the prelate believes otherwise. There is a signal, third voice. A transmission that has been broadcasting for over 200 cycles. We ignored it because it came from beyond the barrier, from the quarantine zones. But the analysts have reviewed it now, and they believe. She trails off, as if afraid to speak the words. What do they believe? I ask. Maleth meets my eyes. In 4,000 years, I have never seen her afraid. Not truly afraid. Not like this. They believe it is a distress beacon, but not for them. For others. For anyone who needs help. It is an open channel, third voice. A permanent offer of assistance to any species in crisis. I feel something cold move through me. A distress beacon, but inverted. Not a cry for help, but a promise of it. From whom? I asked. Maleth hands me the data crystal, and I press it to my temple, letting the information flow directly into my consciousness. I see the signal first, a simple, repeating pulse of electromagnetic radiation, primitive by our standards, barely sophisticated enough to cross interstellar distances. The message is encoded in mathematical progressions, universal enough that any spacefaring species could decode it. And when I translate it, when I parse the meaning from the crude symbols and numerical sequences, I feel the deck shift beneath my feet. This is the designation? I say slowly. This is what they call themselves? No, Maleth says. This is how they categorize the signal, the species that sent it. They call themselves humanity. They are the ones who maintain the beacon, the ones who answer it. I search my memory, sifting through 9,000 years of accumulated knowledge. Humanity. The name is familiar, but only barely. A young species, not yet 5,000 years into their spacefaring age, native to a small yellow star in an unremarkable arm of the galaxy. We surveyed their homeworld once, centuries ago, and classified them as pre-transcendent, level 4 on the core Zenith scale, capable of interstellar travel, but limited in scope and ambition. Their ships were slow, their weapons primitive, their understanding of physics laughably incomplete. We marked them for observation, but deemed them irrelevant to galactic affairs. A footnote, a curiosity. The prelate wants us to answer a beacon from them? I ask, unable to keep the disbelief from my voice. The prelate wants us to survive, Maleth says quietly. And this beacon is the only signal in the galaxy that promises help without demanding anything in return. Every other civilization we've contacted has refused. The Valthari have sealed their borders. The crystalline consensus has entered hibernation. The machine collective has gone silent. We are alone, third voice, completely alone. She pauses, and when she speaks again, her voice is barely a whisper.
Except for them.
The journey to the barrier takes 9 cycles.
We travel in silence, the covenant of lasting peace limping through the void on damaged engines and failing systems. We are one of the last great ships of the hegemony, a vessel that once carried diplomats and scholars across the galaxy, hosting conferences that shaped the destinies of 100 species. Now we carry refugees, survivors, the broken remnants of a civilization that believed itself eternal. There are 4,000 of us aboard. 4,000 out of the trillions who once called the hegemony home. I spend most of my time in the archive, though there is little left to archive. The quantum links to our home systems have gone dark, one by one, like candles being extinguished by an invisible hand. I record what I can, testimonies from survivors, fragments of data recovered from destroyed ships, the last transmissions of worlds that no longer exist.
It is my duty. It is all I have left.
But sometimes, in the quiet hours between watches, I find myself thinking about the signal, about the beacon that has been broadcasting for 200 cycles, offering help to anyone who asks.
Why?
It makes no sense. In all my years, I have never encountered a species that offered aid without expectation of return. The galaxy operates on principles of exchange, resources for protection, knowledge for loyalty, survival for submission. Every treaty I have ever negotiated, every alliance I have ever witnessed, has been built on the understanding that nothing is given freely. And yet this beacon promises exactly that. Help without conditions. Assistance without cost. It must be a trap. It must be a deception. Some predatory species using the language of compassion to lure the desperate into their jaws. But if that is true, why has no one ever reported such predation? Why has the signal continued for 2 centuries without a single warning from the species who answered it? I do not understand, and that disturbs me more than I care to admit.
We cross the barrier on the 10th cycle.
The barrier is not a physical structure. It is a region of space where our sensors become unreliable, where the familiar constellations give way to stranger configurations. The hegemony mapped this region long ago, but never colonized it. There was no need. The resources were scarce, the habitable worlds few, and the species who lived here were too young to be of interest.
Beyond the barrier, the stars look different. Colder, somehow. More distant.
Malef finds me in the observation deck, staring at the unfamiliar sky.
"We've detected their station," she says. "It's small, smaller than I expected." I turn to look at the tactical display she's conjured. The station is indeed modest, a cylindrical structure perhaps 3 kilometers in length, bristling with communication arrays and docking ports. Compared to the vast orbital platforms of the hegemony, it is almost quaint.
Minimal defenses, Malef observes. A few point defense systems, some electromagnetic shielding, nothing that could withstand a sustained assault.
Perhaps they have never faced one, I suggest.
Malef makes a sound that might be a laugh if it had any joy in it. Perhaps. Or perhaps they are arrogant enough to believe they don't need protection.
We approach slowly, following the protocols we have developed for first contact with unknown civilizations. The Covenant broadcasts our peaceful intentions in every language we know, mathematical and linguistic and symbolic. We dim our weapons, lower our shields, present ourselves as suppliants rather than conquerors.
It is humiliating. For 9,000 years, the hegemony has been the one to receive such approaches, not make them.
But pride is a luxury we can no longer afford. The response comes quickly, a simple transmission in perfect Sereneth, flawless in grammar and pronunciation.
Covenant of lasting peace. This is Waypoint Station Erebus. We have received your distress signal and are prepared to offer assistance. Please reduce velocity to matching speed and proceed to Docking Bay 7. Medical and support teams are standing by.
I stare at the console, momentarily speechless.
They knew we were coming. They knew our language. They knew the name of our ship. Maleth's hand moves toward her sidearm, an instinct born of 4,000 years of warfare. I touch her arm gently, shaking my head.
Not yet, I say quietly. Let us see what we are dealing with first.
Docking is a smooth affair, too smooth given the damage to our ship. The human station extends magnetic grapples that adjust perfectly to our hull configuration, guiding us into a berth that seems custom designed for our vessel. When the airlocks seal, I detect that the atmosphere in the docking bay has already been modified to match our respiratory requirements. They were prepared for us. Specifically, precisely prepared. The door opens and I step through first. Protocol demands it as the highest-ranking official aboard. Maleth follows close behind, her hand still resting near her weapon.
The human who greets us is unremarkable.
That is the only word I can find to describe her. She is small, barely half my height, with dark hair cut short and practical, and eyes the color of deep water. She wears a simple uniform, gray and unadorned, with no insignia of rank or decoration of achievement. Her face is calm, her posture relaxed. She looks tired, I realize. Not exhausted, but worn. The kind of fatigue that accumulates over years, over decades, over a lifetime of labor. Third voice, Veilith Kor Seneth, she says, and her pronunciation of my name is flawless. I'm Captain Elena Vasquez of Waypoint Station Erebus. Welcome. She does not bow. She does not kneel. She does not avert her eyes or lower her head or make any of the gestures of deference that species have offered the hegemony for millennia. She simply stands there, calm and composed, as if greeting an ancient and desperate civilization is something she does every day. Perhaps it is. Captain Vasquez, I say, forcing my voice to remain steady. I am grateful for your hospitality. I must confess, I did not expect such a swift response to our transmission. We monitor the beacon constantly, she says. When we detected your approach vector and identified your ship configuration, we began preparations immediately. Your people will find quarters waiting for them, along with medical facilities equipped to treat Sereneth physiology. We've also prepared a data package on the current state of the conflict in your home sectors, compiled from long-range sensor data and intercepted communications. I feel Maleth stiffen beside me. You have been monitoring our sectors, Maleth asks, her voice sharp. Captain Vasquez turns those calm eyes toward her. There is no threat in her gaze, no challenge, but also no apology. We monitor everything we can, she says simply. It's how we know when someone needs help. The hours that follow are disorienting. Human efficiency is not like our efficiency. It is not elegant or refined. It does not flow with the mathematical precision we have cultivated over millennia. But it is relentless, it is thorough, and it achieves results that I would have thought impossible. Within 6 hours, our wounded are receiving treatment in medical bays staffed by human doctors who somehow know our anatomy as well as our own physicians. Within 12 hours, our ship's engines are being repaired by human engineers who work in silence, their movements economical and precise. Within 18 hours, our entire crew has been fed, housed, and integrated into the station's population with a smoothness that defies explanation. I spend most of this time with Captain Vasquez, answering her questions. That is the strange thing. She asks questions, not demands for information, not interrogations designed to extract tactical advantage, but genuine questions. She wants to understand. The Hollow, their tactics, their capabilities, their origins, the scope of the devastation, the nature of the threat. She listens with an intensity that I find unsettling. Her eyes never leave my face as I speak, and she does not interrupt, does not challenge, does not dismiss. She simply absorbs.
You've faced them directly? She asks, after I have described the fall of the Varith cluster.
No, I admit, the Hollow do not engage in direct combat. They simply arrive. Their ships are not like any we have encountered. They do not maneuver, do not communicate, do not negotiate. They descend on a world like a shadow, and when they depart, nothing remains. Not the structures, not the people, not even the molecular residue of what was there before. It is as if the world has been erased.
Captain Vasquez nods slowly. Her expression has not changed throughout my account. Calm, attentive, unreadable.
How long ago did this begin? She asks.
The first reports came 600 cycles ago, I say. We did not take them seriously at first. Isolated incidents, we thought. Anomalies. By the time we understood the scope of the threat, they had already taken 300 systems. And now? I feel the words catch in my throat. I have not spoken this truth aloud before. I have barely allowed myself to think it. Now, they control 80% of what was once the hegemony. Our remaining fleets have been consolidated for a final defense of the throne of stars, but our projections suggest they will not succeed. The Hollow will reach the throne within 50 cycles, and then...
I cannot finish the sentence.
Captain Vasquez is silent for a long moment. Then she rises from her chair and walks to the viewport of her office, looking out at the stars. "Why did you come here, third voice?" she asks quietly. The question catches me off guard. Because the prelate ordered it. Because the signal promised help.
"No," she says, still facing the viewport. "Why did you come? Personally, you could have sent a subordinate, a diplomat, an envoy, but you came yourself, aboard your own ship with 4,000 of your people."
I feel something shift in my chest, an old emotion, one I thought I had mastered centuries ago. Because I had to see, I admit. I had to understand. My entire life, I have believed that the hegemony was the pinnacle of civilization in this galaxy. That we had achieved something eternal, something that would outlast the stars themselves. And now we are dying. We are being erased from existence as if we never mattered at all. And I needed to know if there was anything left, any hope, any reason to continue. Captain Vasquez turns to face me. Her expression is still calm, but something has changed in her eyes. Something that might be understanding. "You came looking for a miracle," she says.
Yes,
I whisper. She nods slowly. "Then let me show you something." The briefing room is larger than I expected.
it is also full.
There are perhaps 30 humans seated around a long table, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of holographic displays. They do not rise when we enter. They do not speak. They simply watch, their expressions unreadable. Captain Vasquez takes her place at the head of the table and gestures for me to sit beside her. Myolith stands behind me, her hand once again near her weapon. "This is the Strategic Response Council for Sector 7, Vasquez says. "The people in this room represent some of the most experienced crisis responders in human space. They've been reviewing the data you provided since your arrival." She nods to a young man at the far end of the table, barely more than a child by my standards, perhaps 40 years old. "Dr. Chen, what have we learned?" The young man rises and manipulates the holographic display. An image appears above the table, a map of the galaxy, with the hegemony's territory marked in blue. As I watch, the blue shrinks, consumed by an encroaching darkness. The entity designated as the Hollow appears to be a non-biological intelligence of unknown origin, Dr. Chen says. Based on the sensor data provided by the Sereneth, its tactics suggest a distributed consciousness operating through a fleet of autonomous vessels. Individual ships range in size from approximately 200 meters to over 50 kilometers. They do not communicate on any frequency we can detect, and they do not respond to attempts at negotiation. He pauses, manipulating the display to show detailed scans of a hollow vessel. Their propulsion and weapon systems do not match any known technology. The destructive process they employ appears to involve molecular disassembly on a planetary scale, essentially converting all matter in a target area into energy, which is then absorbed by their vessels. We believe this energy is used to fuel further expansion. "They eat worlds," another human says quietly. She is older, her hair gray and her face lined with years. "They're not conquering, they're feeding." I feel something cold move through me. In all our analysis, in all our theorizing, we never considered this possibility. We thought the Hollow were invaders, conquerors, destroyers. We never imagined they were simply hungry. "Can they be stopped?" I ask, unable to keep the desperation from my voice. Dr. Chen exchanges a glance with Captain Vasquez. Something passes between them, a silent communication I cannot interpret. "We don't know yet," he admits. "We've never encountered anything like this before, but we're working on it." "Working on it?" Malith's voice is sharp, almost hostile. "We have been fighting these creatures for 600 cycles. Our best weapons, our most advanced technology, nothing has worked. And you think you can find a solution by working on it?" The gray-haired woman raises her head. Her eyes are steady, without fear. "Commander," she says quietly, "humanity has been working on it for our entire existence. Our homeworld tried to kill us with ice ages, with plagues, with asteroids, with our own stupidity. We survived. We spread to the stars in ships that were barely held together with prayers and stubbornness. And now, when another species sends us a distress call, we answer, because that's what we do." She leans forward, and something in her gaze makes me want to look away. "We don't give up. Ever. It's not in our nature." The next few cycles blur together. I spend my time observing the humans, trying to understand them. They are unlike any species I have encountered in 11,000 years of existence. They do not fit into any category I know.
They are not warriors, not in the traditional sense. Their bodies are fragile, their lifespans brief, their physical capabilities unremarkable. And yet they move through their station with a quiet confidence that borders on unnerving. They do not boast of their achievements or display their power. They simply work, steadily and relentlessly, as if the fate of civilizations is a problem to be solved rather than a catastrophe to be mourned. I watched their engineers tear apart our ship's damaged systems and rebuild them better than before, using materials I have never seen and techniques I do not understand. I watched their scientists analyze the data we provided on the Hollow, running simulations and calculations that should take centuries but somehow produce results in days. I watched their doctors treat our wounded with a gentleness that seems incongruous with their efficiency. And I watch Captain Vasquez. She is everywhere, it seems. In the engineering bays, reviewing repair schedules. In the medical wards, speaking with patients. In the strategic command center, coordinating communications with other human installations across the sector. She sleeps rarely, eats quickly, and never, not once, allows herself to show doubt or fear.
On the fourth cycle, I find her alone in the observation deck, staring at the stars. "Do you never rest?" I ask. She turns, and for a moment I see something flicker across her face, a crack in the calm facade. Then it is gone, smoothed away as if it never existed.
Rest is a luxury, she says. I'll rest when the job is done.
I move to stand beside her, looking out at the unfamiliar constellations.
May I ask you a question, Captain?
Of course.
The beacon, the signal that has been broadcasting for 2 centuries. Why?
She is silent for a long moment.
Because no one answered when we called, she says finally.
I turn to look at her, not understanding.
300 years ago, she continues, her voice quiet, humanity faced its first extinction-level crisis, a disease engineered by one of our own factions, designed to eliminate rival populations. It killed 7 billion people in 18 months. We sent out distress signals to every species we had contacted, the Valfari, the Crystalline Consensus, the Machine Collective. We begged for help, for medicine, for resources, for anything.
She pauses, and when she speaks again, her voice carries the weight of generations.
No one answered. I feel something clench in my chest. I remember the Valthari's dismissal of the distress call as irrelevant to galactic stability. I remember the consensus's conclusion that human extinction would be statistically insignificant. I remember the collective's silence and the hegemony's own assessment. Species classification expendable. No intervention required.
We left them to die.
We survived, Vasquez says. We always survive. But we made a promise then. A promise that no species would ever send a cry for help into the void and hear only silence. So we built the beacons, we staffed the waypoints, and we answer every time, no matter who calls.
She turns to face me, and in her eyes I see something that I have never seen in 11,000 years of existence. I see judgment. You asked why we help, she says. The truth is, we help because we remember what it felt like to be alone, to scream into the darkness and hear nothing in return. We help because we know that any species, no matter how powerful, no matter how ancient, can find itself at the edge of oblivion.
She pauses.
Even the Sereneth hegemony. On the 7th cycle, something changes. I am in the Strategic Command Center when the communications officer, a young woman with nervous hands, suddenly stiffens at her console.
Captain, we're receiving multiple signals from the core sectors.
Vasquez is there in an instant, her fatigue forgotten. Source?
Multiple sources, ma'am. Dozens. No, hundreds. They're coming from everywhere.
The holographic display flickers to life, showing a map of human space. Across its surface, points of light are appearing. First a few, then dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. Each light represents a signal, a transmission, a response.
What is this? Maleth asks, her voice barely a whisper.
Captain Vasquez does not answer immediately. She is staring at the display, and for the first time I see something like emotion on her face.
This, she says quietly, is what happens when we decide to help.
She turns to her communications officer. Open a channel to Central Command. Priority Omega. The display shifts, and a new face appears. An older man, his hair white and his features weathered. He wears a uniform similar to Vasquez's, but with more insignia, more marks of rank.
Elena, he says, I assume you've seen the response.
Yes, Admiral. How many?
The old man's expression is unreadable. As of 10 minutes ago, we have confirmed mobilization orders from 347 systems. The combined fleet is being assembled. All reserve units have been activated. We're looking at a response force of approximately 12,000 vessels. I feel Maleth's hand grip my arm. 12,000 vessels. The hegemony's entire active fleet, at its height, numbered fewer than 8,000.
What about the Council? Vasquez asks.
The Council has convened an emergency session. The vote was unanimous. We're designating this as a Class 7 threat, existential risk to known civilization. All resources are being redirected. All production facilities are being converted. We're going to full war footing, Elena. He pauses, and something flickers in his eyes. Something that might be anticipation.
And I've been informed that the architects have agreed to participate.
Vasquez's expression does not change, but I see her hands tighten on the edge of the console. The architects, she repeats. You're sure?
They sent the confirmation themselves. They're already en route.
I turn to Maleth, confused. Who are the architects? Her face is pale, her eyes wide. I don't know. I've never heard the term. But Captain Vasquez has heard my question, and she turns to face us. For the first time, I see something in her eyes that I cannot identify. The architects, she says slowly, are the reason the beacon says extremely strong. The next cycle is a blur of activity. Ships begin arriving at Waypoint Station Erebus, human ships in configurations I have never seen. Some are sleek and deadly, bristling with weapons that pulse with strange energies. Others are massive and industrial, their hulls scarred by decades of hard use. Still others are small and fast, darting between the larger vessels like fish in a school. And they keep coming. Hour after hour, day after day, the fleet grows. Warships, transports, carriers, support vessels, an armada assembling with a precision that defies my understanding. They do not clash, do not compete, do not waste time in posturing or negotiation. They simply arrive, slot into formation, and wait. I watch from the observation deck, unable to look away. How is this possible? I ask Captain Vasquez when she joins me. Your civilization is young. Your resources are limited.
How can you mobilize a force of this scale so quickly?
She is quiet for a moment, watching the ships maneuver in the darkness.
Do you know the history of our species, Third Voice?
I know what our surveys recorded. Your wars, your divisions, your tendency towards self-destruction.
She nods slowly.
All true. We've spent most of our existence fighting each other, killing each other over resources, over ideology, over gods we invented to justify our worst impulses. We've come close to extinction more times than I can count, and every time it was our own fault.
She turns to face me, and her eyes are steady.
But we learned something from all that death. We learned that when the threat is real, when the wolf is truly at the door, we stop fighting each other. We've been divided by every possible thing, race, nation, religion, politics. But when something tries to destroy us all, we become one thing.
She pauses. We become humanity.
The architects arrive on the 9th cycle.
I am in the command center when the sensors detect them, a fleet of vessels emerging from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. They are massive, each ship larger than anything I have ever seen. The smallest is perhaps 50 kilometers in length. The largest is so vast that the sensors cannot accurately measure it.
What are those? Maleth breathes.
Captain Vasquez does not answer immediately. She is staring at the display, and there is something in her expression, a mixture of awe and something that might be fear.
Those, she says quietly, are the generation ships.
I do not understand. Generation ships?
When humanity first left Earth, we didn't have faster-than-light travel. Our early colonists traveled in ships that took centuries to reach their destinations. Generations lived and died in transit, building communities in the void between stars. Some of them never stopped. They just kept going, building, growing, becoming something more.
She gestures at the display, at the impossible vessels hanging in the darkness.
The architects are their descendants. They've been traveling for almost 2,000 years. They've been building for longer than most species have existed. And now they've come home.
The lead vessel is broadcasting a signal. The communications officer patches it through, and a face appears on the display. A human face, but changed. The features are elongated, the eyes larger, the skin pale from generations in artificial light.
This is the Forge Master of the Eternal Dawn, the figure says, and its voice carries harmonics that no baseline human could produce. We have received the call, we have seen the threat, and we have brought what we have built.
The display shifts, showing the cargo holds of the generation ships. What I see there makes my knees weak.
Weapons. Weapons beyond anything I have ever imagined. Orbital defense platforms the size of small moons. Particle accelerators designed to fire concentrated starfire. Autonomous drone swarms numbering in the trillions. And something else. Something that looks like a framework, a skeleton of a device so large that it would dwarf a planet.
What is that? I ask, my voice barely a whisper. The Forge Master's eyes meet mine through the screen, and I feel the weight of centuries pressing down on me.
That, it says, is how we kill gods. The preparations take another 20 cycles.
During that time, I learned more about humanity than I had in the previous 9,000 years of observation.
I learned that they had been preparing for this moment for centuries. Not for this specific threat, They had no way of knowing the hollow would come. But for the moment when something would threaten not just themselves, but everything. Every species that had called them primitive, every civilization that had dismissed them as irrelevant, every empire that had left them to die. They built their beacons as a promise, but also as a trap for themselves, a way to ensure that when the call came, they would have no choice but to answer.
We knew it would happen eventually, Captain Vasquez tells me one night, as we watched the fleet assemble. Some threat that was too big for any one species to handle. We just didn't know when or what form it would take.
And so you prepared anyway, I say. That's what we do, she shrugs, a gesture that seems too casual for the weight of what she is describing. We prepare for the worst, we hope for the best, and when the worst comes anyway, we deal with it. I think of the hegemony, of our certainty, our complacency, our unshakable belief that nothing could threaten us. We were so sure of our own supremacy that we never prepared for the possibility of defeat. We never imagined that we might need help. And now we are paying the price.
The fleet is almost ready, Vasquez says, interrupting my thoughts. Admiral Chen has reviewed the tactical projections. He believes we have a chance.
A chance, I repeat, against a force that has consumed 80% of the most advanced civilization in the galaxy? She turns to face me, and there is something in her eyes that I cannot identify. Something fierce and burning and utterly alien. A chance is all we've ever had, she says. It's always been enough. The fleet departs on the 31st cycle. I watch from the observation deck as they go. 12,000 human warships, 300 generation ships, and a logistics train that stretches for light hours. It is the largest military force ever assembled in the history of the galaxy. And at its heart, the device the architects built.
They call it the anchor.
I do not fully understand how it works. The principles are beyond my comprehension, the mathematics too alien, the physics too strange. But I understand its purpose. It is designed to lock the hollow in place, to create a region of space where their ships cannot flee, cannot retreat, cannot escape. It is designed to make them fight. You're not coming with us.
I turn to find Captain Vasquez standing behind me. She is wearing combat armor now, her face partially obscured by a helmet that gleams in the dim light.
The prelate has requested my presence at the throne of stars, I say. The remaining leadership of the hegemony wishes to witness whatever happens. Vasquez nods slowly. Then, this is goodbye. For now. I hesitate. There is so much I want to say. So many questions, so many apologies, so many things I have never had the courage to speak. Captain, I say finally, I must ask you something. Go ahead. When you answer the beacon, when you respond to a species in crisis, you do so without knowing if they deserve your help, without knowing if they would have helped you in return. Why? Vasquez is silent for a long moment. Then she reaches up and removes her helmet, and I see her face clearly for the first time. The lines of exhaustion, the weight of responsibility, the quiet determination that burns beneath the surface. Because that's not the point, she says. The point isn't whether they deserve it. The point is who we choose to be. Every time we answer the call, we become the species we want to be, the one that doesn't leave others to die in the darkness, the one that remembers what it felt like to be alone. She pauses.
You asked me once if we were arrogant enough to believe we didn't need protection. The answer is no. We're terrified. We're always terrified. But we learned a long time ago that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision that something else is more important. She extends her hand, a gesture of farewell, I realize. I take it, feeling the strength in her grip, the calluses on her palm.
Survive, third voice, she says. When this is over, someone will need to remember what happened. Someone will need to tell the story.
And then she is gone, walking toward the shuttle that will carry her to her ship, leaving me alone with the stars and the silence and the weight of everything I have witnessed.
The Battle of the Threshold lasts for 11 days.
I do not witness it directly. I am aboard a hegemony transport racing toward the throne of stars when the fighting begins. But I follow the transmissions, the reports, the fragmentary data that filters through the chaos of war.
The Hollow come in force. The largest concentration of their vessels ever recorded, a swarm of darkness that blots out the stars. They descend on the human fleet like a wave of extinction, their weapons firing, their ships maneuvering with the eerie synchronization of a single mind.
And humanity stands against them.
The first reports speak of devastation. Human ships destroyed by the hundreds, their crews dying in fire and vacuum. The Hollow's molecular disassembly beams cut through armor like it was paper. The human fleet is pushed back, compressed, forced into an ever-shrinking sphere of defense.
But they do not break. That is the thing that I remember most clearly from those first days. The reports of human ships that refused to retreat, that threw themselves into the path of hollow weapons to protect their comrades, that continued fighting long after they should have been destroyed. I hear the final transmissions of captains who knew they were going to die but kept firing anyway, kept buying time, kept hoping that their sacrifice would mean something.
And then, on the 6th day, the anchor activates.
I am on the bridge of the transport when the sensors detect it, a ripple in space-time that spreads outward from the center of the battlefield, encompassing the entire Hollow fleet. The enemy ships, which have been maneuvering freely, suddenly freeze. Their engines still fire, but they do not move. They are locked in place, trapped in a cage of warped physics.
And humanity attacks.
The generation ships open fire with weapons that have been building for 2,000 years. Beams of concentrated starfire slice through hollow vessels like knives through flesh. Drone swarms descend on the enemy fleet, billions of tiny machines tearing at hulls and systems with mindless, relentless efficiency. And in the center of it all, the anchor pulses and thrums, holding the enemy in place as humanity destroys them one by one.
It takes 5 more days.
5 days of constant combat, of attrition, of grinding warfare on a scale that defies comprehension. The Hollows fight back with everything they have, and the human losses are staggering. But they do not break. They do not retreat. They keep fighting, keep dying, keep pushing forward until there is nothing left to fight. On the 11th day, the last hollow vessel falls silent. The transmission that reaches us is simple, almost anticlimactic. A single phrase, broadcast on all frequencies in every language known to the galaxy.
Threat neutralized. All forces stand down.
I stare at the words on the display, unable to comprehend them. The Hollow, which had consumed 80% of the hegemony, which had seemed unstoppable, which had driven us to the edge of extinction, destroyed, gone.
erased from existence by a species we had dismissed as primitive.
Myolith stands beside me, her face pale, her eyes wide with something that might be shock or awe or both.
How? She whispers. How is this possible? I shake my head slowly. I have no answer.
The aftermath is quieter than I expected.
The human fleet returns to Waypoint Station Erebus, diminished but triumphant. Of the 12,000 warships that departed, fewer than 4,000 remain. The Generation ships are intact, but their crews are exhausted, their resources depleted. They have won, but the cost has been staggering. I am there when Captain Vasquez's ship docks. I wait in the landing bay as the airlock cycles, as the door opens, as she steps through. She looks different, older somehow. The lines on her face are deeper, the shadows under her eyes darker. She moves with the slow care of someone who has been pushed far beyond their limits. But she is alive.
Third voice, she says, and there is a ghost of a smile on her lips. I see you survived.
Yes, I say, thanks to you. Thanks to all of you.
She waves a hand dismissively. We just did what we always do. Answer the call. Fight the threat. Try not to die. She says it so casually, as if the salvation of an entire galactic civilization is a routine occurrence, as if the sacrifice of 8,000 ships and millions of lives is simply the cost of doing business.
I should be grateful. I am grateful. But I am also something else. Something that I have never felt in 11,000 years of existence.
I am humbled. Captain, I say slowly, I owe you an explanation, an apology. She looks at me, her expression unreadable. 300 years ago, when your species sent its distress call, the hegemony received it. We reviewed it, and we chose not to respond. We classified your species as expendable. We left you to die. The words hang in the air between us, heavy with the weight of centuries. Captain Vasquez is silent for a long moment. Then she nods slowly.
I know, she says.
You know, we've known for a long time. Our historians recovered the records. We know exactly which species ignored our call, and why. She pauses. We decided not to hold it against you. I stare at her, not comprehending. Why? We abandoned you. We could have helped, and we chose not to. You should hate us. You should have left us to the same fate. Vasquez shakes her head. That's not who we are. We don't help people because they deserve it. We help them because someone has to, because we know what it feels like to be abandoned, and we refuse to be the species that does the abandoning. She steps closer to me, and I see the exhaustion in her eyes, the weight of everything she has endured. Third voice, humanity has been broken more times than I can count. We've destroyed ourselves, rebuilt ourselves, destroyed ourselves again. We've committed atrocities that would make the hollow look civilized. We are not a good species, not in any objective sense. She pauses, and something shifts in her expression. But we have learned one thing. One lesson that we carved into our souls through centuries of blood and fire. When the darkness comes, you fight. You fight even when you can't win. You fight even when no one is watching. You fight because the alternative is to become the thing you fear. She reaches out and takes my hand, her grip firm and warm. The beacon will keep broadcasting. For as long as humanity exists, it will broadcast. And whenever someone answers, we will come. Not because we're heroes, not because we're saviors, but because we remember. We remember the silence, and we will never let anyone else experience it. I stand now on the throne of stars, looking out at a galaxy forever changed. The hegemony is rebuilding, slowly, painfully, but rebuilding nonetheless. Our surviving worlds have begun to establish new connections, new alliances, new purposes. The Council of Eternal Dawn, which once believed itself the pinnacle of civilization, now speaks of humanity with a mixture of respect and awe. Some speak of debt, of obligation, of gratitude. I speak of something else. I speak of a small species from a yellow star. A species that should have been nothing, that should have been forgotten, that should have been left to die in the darkness of an uncaring universe. I speak of a species that refused to be forgotten. I speak of the beacon that still broadcasts day after day, year after year, century after century, a simple signal repeating endlessly in the void. I understand the designation now. I understand why they marked it that way.
The signal is not a classification of the beacon. It is not a warning or a label.
It is a promise. If you are lost, if you are broken, if you are standing at the edge of oblivion with nothing left but despair, call out, scream into the darkness, send your SOS, your last hope, your final desperate plea. And humanity will answer.
They are not the strongest species in the galaxy.
They are not the wisest, or the oldest, or the most advanced. But they are the ones who answer. And in the end, that is what matters. I am Valeth Kor Seneth, third voice of the Serenith hegemony, and I have lived for 11,000 years. I have seen civilizations rise and fall. I have watched empires crumble and stars die. And I have learned one truth that I will carry with me until my last breath. The greatest strength is not power. It is the choice to use that power to lift others up. The stars are patient. They will burn until the end of time. But humanity is something else. Humanity is hope.